As most of you guys know, Destiny is a ridiculously hyped game, much like Watch Dogs before it. And with any really hyped game, it's hard for it to sort of live up to expectations. Everyone remember Episode 1 for Star Wars? Yeah, well, this is nothing like that, obviously. But still, it is a very hyped game that had a lot to live up to. And I gotta tell you right now, for the most part, Destiny is going to be one of these games that is really going to separate the gaming community. If you're the type of person who likes loot grinds, odds are you're going to really like this game. Once it gets a hold of you, it really stays grabbed to you for a very long time. However, if there's certain elements you don't like, such as the grind or some of the lack of variety, the odds are, in that situation, probably going to put you off the game, and this isn't going to be your cup of tea. One aspect that pretty much no one can argue with is the game's overall beauty and its sound. It has a beautiful soundtrack. The sound effects in particular are really strong. I gotta say, I absolutely love your little speed bike hovercraft thing that you use. It sort of like reminds me of Return of the Jedi, and even the sound effects remind me of Return of the Jedi for that particular vehicle. But the world itself is really realized. All the worlds. There are actually 4 different worlds, or planetoids, or whatever. You go from Earth to the Moon to Venus and finally end up on Mars. And each one has such a unique look to it that it really does sort of give character to these individual environments. It makes them almost alive. Now, unfortunately, they don't have their own gravity or anything like that, so they all play exactly the same. Since this is a Bungie developed game, you know you're going to have a really strong foundation, and that is absolutely true with Destiny. The gunplay is amazing here. Every weapon feels unique, every melee attack connects with just the right amount of oomph. It all comes together in a wonderfully solid package. The game feels like a top tier first-person shooter, and that's because it really is. One element of Destiny that's been highly criticized is the fact that the game doesn't really tell you how the leveling system works, how the different weapons work, what makes them unique, how the 3 individual stats work, which are strength, discipline, and intellect, and so on and so forth. And you know what? I don't actually think this is a bad thing whatsoever. I actually think this is a great thing because it harkens back to the days of old when you didn't really know what you were doing. Now, I know some will say this is poor design, but in my case, I thought it was great because as I started to learn the system, especially when you start to learn about how certain weapons have certain properties and they're very good against certain types of enemies, well, you really get a lot of enjoyment out of the game. Could they have done a better job explaining things? Absolutely, no question about it. But I'm not one of these to say I want to be handheld. I actually really enjoyed not knowing what was going on for the duration of the game. Now, there are a couple of things that I thought could have been handled a little bit better. I think the level progression tree could have been a little bit more advanced because up until you hit level 15, all warlocks are exactly the same, all titans are exactly the same, and all hunters are exactly the same. And that's a large portion of the game. Yes, there's a lot of post-game content, which I'll get to in just a second, but for the most part, I think they could have did a better job with the level progression and even the weapons and armor. At first, nothing feels really unique until you get to level 20 or higher, and then things start to really sort of shape towards whatever the subclass is that you've picked and other subclasses and so on. Something else that it's kind of iffy is the matchmaking, and it's not so much that you're going up against other players who are not skilled or anything like that. No, this is not about the PvP. This is actually about the PvE. You see, you can queue up for random strike missions. Think of it like dungeons if you played World of Warcraft, something like that. They're 3-player areas. And the problem is that often what will happen is 1 or 2 players will go, ugh, I don't want to play this one, and they'll hightail it out of there. and then you're all alone. Now, the strike mission will scale to just you being all by yourself, but it takes all the fun away from it, and it's often too challenging, so you just get out of there. Which leads to the next problem. There's a lot of load times here, and when a situation like that happens, you're always back in the load screen, back in the load screen, back in the load screen. Why the hell couldn't the game just grab another Guardian and throw them in your game? I don't get it. And it did happen to me once where that's exactly what happened, but only once. And I've done around 45 to 50 strike missions, so I don't quite understand what the deal is with that. The PvP is a whole other matter. You see, it's fun. There's different gameplay modes you can play. I like the fact that it will level everyone off to basically have the exact same powers, so a level 12 can go up against a level 30 and they actually stand a chance. It's only their skill that's preventing them from succeeding. However, if you are a fan of Call of Duty and things like that, you really cannot customize the PvP portion anywhere near as much as you can in other games. So the hardcore FPS fans might find that a little bit discouraging. Then there's also the fact that the in-game communication tools are pretty much non-existent, and because of that, MMO fans might find the game a little bit hard to swallow. Then there's the fact that everything in this game is a grind. Now again, it depends on who you are. If you're the type of person who likes to play Diablo for 10 years straight going because you want, I don't know, one piece of gear, maybe you'll like this. But for others, you're going to be repeating the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again once you hit the endgame content. And everything is gated behind either reputation or a special currency. So you're always going to have to grind for those things. What's so funny with Destiny is that, I mean, on its surface, you can see a lot of the fundamental flaws, but at the same time, you can also see the hope for greatness, because there's a lot of potential here. Already, every single week since the game has launched, there's been new content added. We had a raid, we had different Crucible or PvP events, then there was something called the Queen's Wrath, I think it was called, or something like that, where you could get a whole bunch of legendary gear, and so on and so forth. So there's some real potential here, and if you're like me, and you're really enjoying the game, well, give it a shot. I mean, it might surprise you. If you're expecting something like Halo or Call of Duty more for the multiplayer portion and Halo more for the single-player story element, you're probably going to be disappointed. This is not that style of game. This is an MMO light, is what I call it. And it really depends. It's a loot grind, and if that's your cup of tea, if that's your thing, you might love this game. If it's not, I would say probably stay far, far, far away from this, but who knows? All I know is I can't get away from the game. I've put in over 65 hours already, and it doesn't look like I'm going to stop anytime soon. Alright guys, for the full written review, be sure to check out projectcoe.com. I left out all kinds of content on purpose for you guys to go check that out. So, I guess I'll see you online, Guardians.
Well done. Sepix Prime cast a great shadow over our city. With its destruction, the fallen devils will grow weaker. But we must stay vigilant. The fallen are crafty, and they'll find ways to survive. They always do.
do